Hey everyone, Shida here. Today I wanna talk about the older Resident Evil games. I know that they can be very intimidating to get into. That's probably why they are remaking most of them. Even Silent Hill 2 is being remade to be more accessible. I keep hearing about how good these remakes are, but before I eventually get to play them, I wanted to check the originals first. So I had something to compare to, and let me tell you, these titles are everything they say and more. I simply loved them. I have played RE3 as a kid, but only on easy mode, in which you can save infinitely and also start with all the weapons already. Despite that, in this last October I played RE1, 2, 3 and Code Veronica, but in this video I will focus only on the ps1 games. Since I played RE3 as a kid, my experience is probably gonna be a little better than someone who never touched any of the games, but I intend to offer some noob tips to make these early titles more approachable, as I feel there is nothing else like them. It's almost a shame that they changed the formula so much. Anyway, this is 20 beginner tips for Resident Evil. With all of that out of the way, let's start with probably the most controversial aspect of it. Tank controls. Look, it's unconventional, but really isn't that hard. I honestly would say it isn't hard at all, but that's me, and I don't wanna be shaming anyone. Yeah, the movement is not super precise sometimes, but it rarely needs to be. This is how you move. You press up in the controller so the character moves forward. You press down to walk backwards. You use left and right to turn around. You can turn around and move forward at the same time to better guide your character. That's kinda how you're supposed to play actually. Don't find weird if you're running against a wall, that's just how it is. Once you decide in which direction you want to go, press the run button in your controller and that's it. It may feel weird at the start, but in the first few hours it should become second nature. Oh, and I think it's better to use the D-pad rather than the analog stick. These games are about managing resources. Ammo, healing and saves are all limited. I would say that the games provide way more than enough to get by, but you should be mindful still. And just in case you're going completely blind, well, mostly, I thought I needed to say what these games are like. Do not be wasteful. On that note, healing is usually more important than ammo. Okay, this one is debatable. Generally speaking, killing zombies prevents you from getting hit, so you can stack up on healing. These games essentially have a maximum limit of how many times you can get hit, based on the amount of healing the map has available. And although the same logic applies to ammo, you have enough of it to kill most, if not all, the enemies in the game. So if you have to choose between wasting ammo or risking getting hit, you probably should value your healing resources more. But in reality, you should try to work with what you have. If you have a bunch of healing and close to no ammo, maybe you should try to value ammo more in that case. Moving on. Be stubborn. Just because you died doesn't mean that you should stop. I rarely died and then immediately die again to the same thing. This isn't really a hard game, although I wouldn't call it easy either. It may happen that you die and lose a lot of progress because you didn't save for too long. But getting back to where you were not only is usually faster than the first time, but now with the gift of hindsight, you end up there with more resources, having less ammo being used and less damage being taken. You don't have to kill every enemy. Avoiding conflict with the zombies entirely is not just actually easy. It mostly depends on the size of the room and the amount of zombies. Sometimes it's pretty much impossible to avoid them. Other times it's pretty easy, and occasionally completely free. But more commonly, it's only possible if first you kill a few of the zombies. But remember that this may come back to bite you in the ass. Most of the time I beat these games with way more ammo than I need. And some zombies that I would spare would happen to be in areas that you are supposed to come back multiple times. And in one of those times, that zombie might take you for a sandwich. So just because you can spare a zombie, doesn't always mean that this is the best idea. To be fair, this is a very hard choice to do without hindsight, so try not to stress too much about it. Don't be too scared to use ink ribbons. Ooh, the amount of saves in the Resident Evil games is limited. Isn't that scary? Yeah, this is exactly what they are going for. The feeling of knowing that you cannot save at any time you want brings a small amount of dread that follows you through the entire game. But this might make the game feel a little too inaccessible, so I'm gonna try to demystify this a bit. In RE1, 3 and Code Veronica, pretty much every single time you find an ink ribbon, you find 3 of them together. Ink ribbons being the item that you use to save, and most of the time close to the typewriter, which is also needed to save. If you're not saving like crazy, I would say that by the time you use your second save, you should be finding another set of 3. So for the most part, they give you way more ink ribbons than you need. Just because they made it a resource doesn't mean that it is scarce. I often would beat the game having plenty of ink ribbons in my box. That being said, I have to take a minute to talk about RE2. In this one, every time you find an ink ribbon, they only give you 2. I've had situations in which I ran out of ink ribbons, and at least one situation in which I lost like 30 minutes of progress because I wasn't saving frequently. It didn't take long to get back to where I was, because, you know, hindsight. But this isn't fun, and it's not something you want to see happening. This is not to say RE2 is bad, far from it. These games are amazing to this day. It's just to say that maybe be a little more mindful in this one. I would say RE2 has the perfect balance if you want ink ribbons to be a resource like ammo and healing. If you just want the illusion of it being a resource, the other games are better, and also makes for a more relaxed experience. Which should not be considered a bad thing just because it's supposed to be an horror game. Building tension is good, but releasing it can also feel amazing. And on a similar subject, keep the ink ribbons in the box. Yeah, in case you don't know, in Resident Evil games you usually store items in these boxes and they somehow just go to wherever other box you open. The excess of ammo and healing, weapons, the key items you probably don't need right now, these are all stored here. This is needed because you have a limited inventory space, from usually just 6 to 10 items depending on the game. That being said, keep the ink ribbons in the box. You might be thinking, but what if I find a typewriter and I have no ink ribbon? Well, you don't save then. Situations like this are very rare to begin with. Only 3 places like this come to mind in the games I played, and they usually aren't far away from another typewriter that has a box nearby, in the same room most of the time, and occasionally they will even have an ink ribbon nearby for you to pick up, so don't waste your limited inventory space with this. Make multiple saves. This is honestly not really necessary. It's not something I did, but it can prevent you from soft locking if you screw up too hard. So I thought I should put it in here. Reload weapons from the inventory. Combining items in the inventory is an essential mechanic of the game. This is used from everything to figuring out puzzles, combining same type of ammo, herbs for better healing, and reloading your weapon. This one I consider to be very important. When shooting a zombie, as he comes closer, often 1 or 2 bullets close to dying, you may start the reloading animation. This may end up with you being damaged. To prevent this, try to keep a good sense of how close you are of running out of ammo. Feel free to occasionally open the inventory to reload if you are not certain. You can combine the ammo to the weapon at any point as long as the weapon is not full already. This is basically a mechanic to keep you paying attention. If you were beaten because you forgot, that's on you, so don't let it happen. Abuse the inventory screen. Suddenly you are in a situation with a zombie very close to you, while you're holding your handgun. What would you do? You open the inventory screen that functions similarly to a pause button, you get your big weapon and you kill the zombie. Simple as that. You cannot be turned into a zombie. You don't get the virus by being bitten by a zombie, as much as it would make sense. But some enemies may poison you. I don't really understand the poison mechanic. You cannot see your HP properly, you get slower I think, and die more easily. To heal from this, just use a blue herb. Poison was such a non-factor that I always beat the game with a shit ton of blue herbs. Even on Code Veronica, where this mechanic is super annoying, but I do not want to talk about Code Veronica right now. You will get your day, I think. Don't be afraid of doing recon. If you are faced with several directions, save, then explore as much as you can, with little regards to your health and ammo. Then reload your save and use your new acquired info to your advantage. This is a weird tip because surely isn't something you need to do. I only did this a couple of times. The main place in which I think this is a good idea is in the beginning of RE1. The mansion is so open and it's possible to grab many key items without finding any good weapon, and eventually you will run out of ammo. It all can be pretty overwhelming, but after an hour or two I feel like you get into a more comfortable situation. The first time I did this, I restarted the game over an hour in, to a much more successful run. But you can always do this when you think you were way too screwed by a certain part of the game. Or if you have spent way too much ammo, assuming it hasn't been long since you last saved. For instance, I once spent a lot of ammo on these sharks. They do not die, so I felt like I should reload. Avoid using your big guns on zombies. The best example I have for this, again, is in the beginning of RE1. It's very possible that you get the bazooka way before you get the shotgun, and when running out of handgun ammo, it may be tempting to use your bazooka on zombies. This may not be the wisest of moves. Most of the time, for zombies, you want to use the handgun, or the shotgun if they are near or at a bigger number and close together, and that goes for any other mid-tier weapon as well. The examples of common top tier weapons that I have is the Magnum and the acid rounds for the bazooka/grenade launcher. You do not want to use that on something weak. I would recommend saving it for bosses and stronger enemies like the hunter. On a side note, you can use the shotgun to blow up zombies' heads by aiming up when they are close. Now for a very good tip. Don't use the knife to kill enemies. Just don't. I'm just saving you time. Put it in the box as soon as possible. I don't even have footage of me using it. Read the notes. Yeah, I know how it feels to stop everything you are doing in the game to read the notes, but not only they can help you get immersed in the game, it occasionally can explain the reason why things are the way they are. And most importantly, they may have answers and tips for solving the many puzzles you need to do in order to proceed. The texts are usually pretty short, and if you don't want to read them now, everything gets saved in your inventory so you can read it later. Aiming. First, note that not every version of the game has the auto-aim feature. It makes shooting the enemies a lot easier since you don't have to slowly turn to them. In Resident Evil 2 for instance, at least on my version, I had to go on settings to enable it. I won't delve into it, but just know that this is how the game is supposed to be played. The real tip here is that by using the auto-aim, it's easier to figure out if there are enemies in the room, or to see if they are actually dead after they fall. If your character turns into a direction when you aim, it means that it's pointing the gun to an enemy. Leave the room. You go into a room, and then you realize you don't want to deal with what's inside. Don't panic, just leave, take your breath, think of what you saw or heard and adjust accordingly. This may even work when bosses are present. This usually resets the enemies to their original positions, which might be useful. That being said, enemies reset their HP if you leave the room. I'm not 100% sure on this because I didn't test, but this is a question I had all the time during my playthrough, and apparently from what I could find in most games, if you shoot a zombie, then leave without having killed the enemy, and then come back, the game does not remember the damage you dealt to it, so essentially you just wasted ammo. In most cases, it's best to just finish whatever enemy you started shooting. This is a particularly useful information to know on Resident Evil 3, but just in case you know nothing about that game, I want to delve further. Hearing enemies. Occasionally, when you enter a room, you won't immediately be able to see if there are enemies in it. But if you wait a few seconds and try to listen, you will know that there is something in the room, as they always do some sort of noise. And finally, use your phone to take pictures. Yeah, your in real life smartphone. Take a pic of the screen to remember some puzzle information. It makes life a lot easier. Back in the day, we would usually have a pen and paper at hand, and although this evokes a nostalgia feeling, there is also no reason why you shouldn't just use your phone. The main advantage is that months later, when scrolling through your gallery, you will see the photo and remind yourself of the good times you had with the game. And that's it! If you liked the video, leave a like, share and subscribe. And also let me know if you would like more Resident Evil content. Follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/cheaterregan and ask me to play the other Resident Evil games I haven't yet played. If I put that link in the description, YouTube will send BOWs after me. Go watch a few of my other videos, they are pretty good. I want to see you here again next time. Have a spooky night and goodbye. And if you stayed so far, here's a bonus tip. Do not get distracted by just TKF polygons.